a very human story, ideal for a family service. So I chose that as the theme for the preaching. Now, this letter of Paul, he's off duty. This is a personal letter to a friend, not one of his letters to the churches on church matters. So you can bet that he means what he says. And you can see how Paul is when he's off duty. And the answer is exactly the same as when he's on duty. He is thoroughly and utterly motivated by his love for Christ and enthralled by the gospel and what it can do. And this is spelled out in this matter of this guy called Onesimus. Now the name means profitable. You may now pick up the pun in the reading. And he belonged to a friend of Paul's called Philemon, or Philemon, depending on how you want to say it, who was a fairly important citizen, I imagine, because he had a house big enough to host a church in a city up the valley from Ephesus, up the Lycus Valley towards Colossae, and Onesimus, one of his slaves, and he ran away. And he wound up in jail, probably in Ephesus, where Paul was imprisoned too, and there Paul thoroughly converted him to Christianity, and he became Paul's valet, really, but the relationship is much closer even than Bertie Wooster and Jeeves. He's a real friend, a real helper, and he does become a really profitable character. But he is a runaway slave, and that's a criminal offence. And the letter is all about how Paul wants to deal with this problem. Now, in your news sheets, I've given you a letter from a guy called Pliny. Pliny the Younger, as it happens. That's Pliny the Younger. I don't know if you can see him. He looks a bit grouchy. That's because he never really got over being Pliny the Younger, and Pliny the Elder was a much more intelligent and clever guy. He was Pliny the Younger's uncle, and he brought Pliny up. A man who wrote an enormous natural history. Everything virtually was known at that time, most of it wrong, about the natural world. A man of enormous learning, erudition, and curiosity. And unfortunately, his curiosity led him to go and investigate when Vesuvius erupted and engulfed. What's the place? He was on a ship out at sea, and he went in to see what was going on, and the fumes overcame him. Pliny the Younger, who was a very cautious man, stayed further away and lived to be an older Pliny the Younger. And wrote lots and lots of letters, mainly because he could never make his mind up on anything and was always writing to his boss, asking what he should do. And one of those letters is one of the earliest testimonies we have to the spread of Christianity, when he had to try some Christians when he was governor of Bithynia. But the other one is on a matter very similar to this letter here. He was asked to intercede with the servant of an acquaintance of his who had run away, and the servant begged Pliny to save him from punishment. And that's the letter you have on your news sheets. And when Tom Wright writes his massive and masterly 2-volume study of Paul, he starts with those two letters, because he says if we had nothing else to tell us about what Christianity was about, the contrast between the two would give us a really good starting point, because the whole world has shifted. And so I thought I would invite Pliny along to talk to us this morning. Now I'm cheating a bit historically, because Paul and Pliny didn't quite overlap. There's about 50 years between them. Paul dies about AD 60. Pliny is governor when he tries these Christians just about 110 AD. So there's not quite an exact overlap. And there's also another slight problem, is that Pliny's been dead for nearly 1900 years. So I've had to ask somebody to stand in for him. And here he is, dressed exactly like Pliny would be, really. Yeah, did you know that this fancy gear we wear is actually just what a Roman gentleman would have worn? That we don't change very quickly in the church. So here we are. This is Pliny the Younger, and I am St. Paul. Good to meet you, Pliny. Now, what do we have in common?
Nothing.
Oh.
You are an upstart Jewish troublemaker, an agitator for some annoying sect called Christians.
Yeah.
A dangerous bunch. I tried and executed a few of them when I was governor of Bithynia. I, on the other hand, am a Roman aristocrat, yes, who represents all that is truly Roman, noble, and upright, a pillar of society from an outstanding family.
Yes, but we do have something in common. We both had to deal with a similar problem. The problem of a servant in trouble with his master. And the master was a friend of ours.
I do remember an acquaintance, Sabianus. Not a friend exactly, he was my social inferior. But he had a servant, a free man who crossed him. Don't remember his name. Something dreadfully plebeian, I should think.
Yeah, but you helped that servant.
Well, he made a terrible scene, weeping and wailing, absolutely terrified. And so he should be. A master has absolute power to punish his servants. And I knew Sabianus was absolutely furious. I made this horrible little oiknoet too, gave him a real dressing down, put him in his place. I think he was genuinely sorry in the end and recognized the error of his ways. I presume you did the same.
Not exactly, no. The slave, in this case, was called Onesimus, and I converted him to Christianity. Yeah. He became my dear friend and helper, tending me while I was in prison, and it was a real problem, because his master, Philemon, was also a Christian and also a friend.
What is your problem? The law is the law.
Well, yeah, the law is the law, yeah, but I mean, you had your friend's servant pardoned.
Well, as I said, this was just a trivial upset. It was a chance to show how magnanimous and generous I am. It also put Sabianus in his place, reminded him that I was his social superior. Yours is a much more serious case than mine. A runaway slave must be returned to his master and must be punished.
Yeah, well, the problem is that while we Christians try and act like good citizens and obey the law, we don't really run on law. Our Master, Jesus Christ, didn't lay down laws. He taught us a way, and that way can be summed up in the word agape. Love, right? Okay? And what I really wanted was for Philemon to release Onesimus and let him continue as my helper and my friend.
Oh my God. How utterly extraordinary. But if that is what you want, then you seem to run this blasted sect. Tell them what they should do.
And as I said, we don't do things that way. Master Jesus Christ said that those who want to be the leader must be the servant. The first must be last, and last must be first. I wanted something based on mutual love, respect, and reconciliation. I'm not the boss. Jesus Christ is the boss of this bunch which you call Christians. And he died that we might be forgiven. And what I had to do was to remind Philemon of that so that he would forgive Onesimus. Then I might hope he would be as Christian to me and return Onesimus to me. I don't want any power except that comes through this gospel of Christ which I preach.
You can't run an empire that way.
Well, no, but you can run a church. Look, it's not easy, but I do believe that if we stay really close to Christ, if we read and understand his words and try and see things in his way, we can do things differently. We can make miraculous things happen. We can make something new and better emerge. We can hope for something more.
I don't want anything new. I want the good old Roman way, and I will die to protect it. Or preferably, I will put others to death to protect it.
Yeah, that sounds more like it, yes.
But anyway, what happened when you did things your way? Did this Onesimus mend his ways and learn to be a good servant?
Well, I'll tell you another story, and I'll give you a hint. About the time that you were executing Christians in Bithynia, may I remind you did that? Yes. Another Christian was on his way to Rome to be executed. His name was Ignatius, and no, you won't have heard of him, not in your class. But he wrote a whole series of letters, and you do know about writing letters.
Yes.
As he went on his journey, he wrote to all the churches on his way, asking for help, but also, being a bishop, preaching a bit of gospel to them. And when he wrote to the church at Ephesus, where these events we've discussed occurred, he praises their bishop. He has a thing about bishops, being a bishop himself, but he picks out their bishop as a really outstanding character. He says, "Blessed is he who granted you, worthy as you are, to possess such a bishop." And the name of the bishop is Onesimus. Well, okay, it's a common name, but what do you think? Did this useless slave transform into an exemplary bishop? Did the gospel triumph? Is that a miraculous more that I was looking for? There you are.
So, let us affirm our common faith in the miraculous God, Father,